the concept of fluidity, I feel like, is really important to discuss. So I appreciate you guys for listening. If you're somebody that is trying to create some fluidity and be in flow, there are ways that we can do that intentionally. I definitely want to share ways that I've done it intentionally, that I've tried to create that intentionally, that I try to intentionally create some consistent fluidity. It's been a really deep processing of what creates friction, and obviously self-awareness. Your level of fluidity can honestly only be as good as your ability to be honest with yourself, because part of intentionally creating fluidity has to do with you really recognizing the sources of friction, or the things that create that lack of fluidity, the things that don't let you just feel like, what's causing your day to feel like it's not going smoothly. Something about being in motion fluidly that really helps our entire situation, right? Like, if things are able to flow fluidly with ease, like things are going smooth. It's a topic that I've been discussing in like a healing client session space. It's definitely a topic that is an intricate part of the work. The element of fluidity is really important to really get a feel for, to learn how to actually create that, right? Usually you're either going to feel like you are in fluidity intentionally, or you're in fluidity sort of accidentally. And then you may feel like you're not in fluidity intentionally, and then you may feel like you're not in fluidity unintentionally, which to me is kind of the worst feeling, the most uncomfortable feeling, because it really fires off a lot of your instinctual stress alarms in the body, distress alarms. Like, the body has signals, receptors, chemical wiring, messaging system, all around distress. So different forms of distress fire off different warning signals throughout our body and mind, because they're connected. And so, to just think about the alarm systems that could potentially fire off, and how deeply, how, violently trying to get our attention when we feel like we're not in flow, unintentionally. Like, we have no control over our motion, our friction, our distress. It's like you're just bumping, through shit. No, that's gonna psychologically activate some serious distress, and physically it's going to really amplify that feeling of being in survival mode. For example, you've got tons of errands, you've got a lot of things that you have to accomplish in a short amount of time, and there is a mastery of fluidity and planning, but also intuition and a lot of sensory abilities. Like, if your natural, sensory abilities are really working properly, then you have a big advantage when it comes to learning how to create some fluidity, because, to take it to to take it to a deeper level, being intentional is key. And to be intentional about creating some fluidity is very doable. Very doable. It's holistic health habits, you know? I really would love to dive into that right now. I do not actually have the time to dive into the ways that we can intentionally create some fluidity besides the ones that I've already mentioned, just pinpointing the sources of friction, really being able to be honest with yourself, really identifying what you want your human experience to feel like, you know, how much fluidity feels good to you. Are you willing to take responsibility for the level of fluidity that you have? Is this something that you feel like, are you capable of feeling like you can own the amount of fluidity that you're experiencing is a direct result from the choices and moves and organizational skills that you have to use? You know, these are things that I've had to really evaluate and consider when the end result and the goal is to be able to experience the fluidity. You have to reverse engineer what helps me feel fluidity, what feels like fluidity. You know, that could be journaling. You then reverse engineer that back to, okay, well, what, you know, could create sources of friction, because I feel like it's just a mental unpacking and like an unraveling. It's like untying a knot or releasing. Like when you release tension in massage therapy, you're actually taking a muscle tissue that had been contracted to where there's no blood flow through that area. If there's no blood flow, there's no energy, there's no fluidity, right? And so when you apply a certain amount of pressure, you can signal to the muscle fibers there will be a release of that tension. There are muscles that you could be creating tension within that you don't even realize you're not consciously contracting. So just to give you a sense of how the mind and the body is tied to the concept of fluidity that you experience, is very similar to you learning how to apply the right kind of pressure in the right places in your mind and body to allow that softening, the opening, the relaxing, the releasing for the fluidity that you're looking for. And if you're doing this to be able to create more value and, you know, whatever it is that you're doing, if you're trying to use this fluidity for your business, for your clients, for your community, for bringing the value that you bring through your creativity, you have a easier capacity to do everything that you're doing. Like if you can insert fluidity under what you're doing, it makes everything feel smooth. It makes everything feel doable. This is a much longer video than I had intended it to be, so thank you for listening to my ramblings. But when I saw the car make this weird turn, and I was like, this for the third time in traffic through driving, reminded of the art of fluidity, the skill of the rendezvous, the, you know, the planning, the organization, the logic, like all of that is so important, and it's on the creative spectrum as well. You know, all of those things are on the creative spectrum. It's the opposite end of anything that has to do with like the divine, you know, spontaneous channeling of just allowing and receiving and flowing. It's like, you know, it's such a balance. And so thank you for just being with me and letting me unpack some of my thoughts around this, because it's been something that I've just been having so many conversations about. And I think if we can master intentionally creating a little bit more fluidity, if we can master creating the experience of more fluidity, we can, the byproduct, you know, the benefit of that and the thing we get to, like the beautiful thing that comes from that, the effect of that is an opening of more creative energy. It's like a relaxing, open, comfortable, pleasurable, non-tense space to be in, which allows for more creativity.